My name is Brigitte Davila, and I teach at San Francisco State University in the College of Ethnic Studies. I've been there for 25 years, and I teach government policy classes there. It's a multidisciplinary, and I'm also on the Board of Trustees for City College. So I care very deeply about access to quality higher education. And I'm going to be talking about the part equity for higher education. And before I get into higher education, I just want to give another shout out for universal pre-K. I have a 5-year-old living with me now, and I loved universal pre-K that we have here in San Francisco, so we do have access to it here. But the parts that I'm going to address are supporting the proposal to offer free universal community college education and vocation education and expand to all other public higher education. Forgive student debt by legislative action. Provide more grants and expand work-study programs that pay a livable wage. Reduce and end standardized testing to be replaced with a comprehensive critical curriculum that prepares youth to change society and sustain themselves financially. And by the time I'm done, I'm going to add a few more to this just to recognize some of the trends that are going now in higher education. But I wanted to start with telling you a little bit about my background. So I'm a first-generation student. I went to Los Angeles Unified School District, which was not known for churning out college grads by the thousands. So it was a unique time. It was in the 1970s, and one of the things that I remember was the soft segregation at my school, where Latino students were systematically kind of pushed into the trades. Not that there's anything wrong with the trades, but we were definitely excluded from college prep unless we pestered and advocated for it. So I do have to say that what happened with me was the Chicano Movimiento. At that time, a lot of students were organizing and they reached out. I was reached out by someone from Mecha who told me, oh, you should go to the CSU, and I was like, really? You think I could? I had no clue. And my husband, it was the same thing. He was going to East LA Community College, and someone from Process Recruitment at UC Berkeley reached out to him. And I know I have friends who used to live here on 24th Street. I remember one of them told me out of high school, he went to John O'Connell, and somebody came up to him from San Francisco State, like, hey bro, you want to go to school? So it was a very heady time when a lot of us were exposed to higher education and we might not have gone otherwise. So, so I have to say that about the cohorts of mostly Chicano students. There weren't as many Latino students back then in the 1970s. And so there was a model that did work. But I want to talk about some other public education models before getting to how we can implement the things that will work. So as a policy background for higher education, I'm sure that all of you are familiar with one of the biggest public education acts ever, and that was the GI Bill. So the GI Bill really expanded education in an unprecedented way in the United States. And what's interesting about that is there was a lot of naysayers back then even. In 1944, the University of Chicago, a spokesperson there issued a statement. Well, actually they wrote an article. And they were talking about how this flood of people, they're unqualified, and what's going to happen to higher education, it's going to go downhill. There's all kinds of statements like that about the GI Bill. Well, we know that it really did expand access for a lot of working class servicemen that came back at that time and changed the trajectories of their families. So a lot of people were able to get access, and it was true that they did come flooding in to higher education. That part was true. But on the whole, they got their certificates, they got their degrees, and that enabled their families to move forward too. So in terms of social mobility, the GI Bill was huge. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about California's own education master plan. So that's what we had here in 1960. It was a result of a lot of discussions how to increase the competitiveness of California. And finally what happened was a bill was passed that would, first of all, consolidate the CSU system, the UC system, and community colleges to have their discrete areas of focus. The UC system is a research institution where not only research goes on, but they also are the only doctoral granting unit here. And then the CSUs were to provide undergraduate education and master's programs. And then last was the community colleges. And they were to provide an education for everybody that could graduate from high school or needed some extra work to do or wanted to transfer. And that's how we have the system that we do now. And in the beginning, it was tuition free. And there were some fees, but they were very low. And that has changed over the years, especially in the 90s and in the 2000s when you had increasing budget cuts. And you again heard talk about, well, college shouldn't be for everyone. I still hear this now. You know, we need to limit it, and some people just shouldn't go to college, and if you really want to go, you'll be able to pay for it. So these kinds of statements are still being made to justify eroding the California master plan. Since I work at the CSU, I can see the effect that it's had personally on my students. And as a trustee for the community college, I can see the effect it's had there, not only before when it was $46 a unit, but now that we have free city for everybody at City College, and many other community colleges are expanding that as well. So what I would like to see in this case is going back to the original promise of access to higher education for everybody, and also paying for things that students need, like housing, food. A lot of it's not paid for now, so the grants that you do have don't really cover everything, and you have housing insecurity and food insecurity on a level now that I have never seen in my 25 years of teaching at the CSU. There's been piecemeal approaches to deal with it. I mean, we have a food bank, that's great. But we really need to address the issue of why don't students have enough money for food? Why don't they have enough money for housing? Why don't they have enough money for books? Books are very expensive. It's not to say that the master plan hasn't done some good. It's done an incredible amount of good. Proportionally speaking, there's more people in college now than ever before. So we still do have the system in place, but what we need to do is make it so that it is truly accessible for everybody. And I have some ideas for doing that. So one of the ideas I have are going back to the peer-to-peer types of outreach that occurred when I was not even thinking about college. I was actually at a party when someone from METJA approached me and talked to me about it. So increasing that peer-to-peer outreach from students. Now, California has changed a lot. And when talking about the GI Bill and talking about the California Master Plan, I have to say that the majority of people who benefited from that are white males who were in a position to actually take advantage of this opportunity. So some of the changes I would like to see is not only the peer-to-peer outreach by people of color to other students, but also expanding Pell Grants, expanding Cal Grants to actually pay for all the other necessary things, the things that are called in the California Master Plan auxiliary, like food and housing. But you can't really study very well if you're constantly concerned about that. And then the other thing I want to talk about is support. So students are not really getting supported when they are at school. Education is part of it, but having support, especially if they've come from a high school that didn't offer AP classes or was just subpar for various reasons, those students need support to excel. And when they do get that support, they do excel. And when you have over 50% of public school students are Latino now, and most of them are low income or on the lower end of the income spectrum. So you really need to provide that support if you want to keep educating people. As other groups become smaller and smaller, we need to think about, well, what is it that we need to do to educate this group of people? They have brains like everybody else. I'm living proof of that. I was actually working in a factory when I went to this party. And I was working in a factory that made underwater equipment. I remember I was in the stock room, and I felt lucky to get that job right out of high school. My mom worked there, she got the job for me. You know, and then years later, through a lot of these programs and accessible access to college, I was able to go to UC Berkeley twice. So I have an undergraduate degree in rhetoric, and I have a law degree from UC Berkeley. So these things do work. If you have the type of support, I had EOP, that's the Educational Opportunity Program. I would like to see that funded and expanded. Right now, it's going under at a lot of different universities, or it's just not supported and left to wither on the vine. This was very important to me because it was the first time I found out that you could get tutoring when you weren't failing. I was like, what? You know, it totally shocked me. Oh, this is how they do it. So things like that. And then the other thing that I think we need to do is look at these students, these low-income, marginalized, mostly Latinx students, and see them as an integral part of the academy. They are part of the college. They are part of the university. And we are here to serve them and help them obtain their degree. Now, the reason why we had a GI Bill and a master plan in the first place was to increase our competitiveness. We can't exclude the students that are here now. So that's why we need to add a couple more things I would add on to this to include welcoming and making these students an integral part of the academy. Thank you.